violence won't come from the church. Violence will come from you.
Yes.
That name human right, you'll say, this is my right. I have the right to get married. Why are you discriminating me? I'm a believer. This is my church. I want to get married. Then they'll come and tell me as a pastor, no, why are you discriminating them? You cannot discriminate against sex. Yeah. That word will be misused. It has already been misused.
There was outrage when people thought that it was Christians. But where did the outrage go when they found out that it was a homosexual? Where was the outrage from the LGBTQ community when they found out that one of their own had murdered one of their own?
And something that I hear a lot is this conflating of queer people and protecting our children. And I think we need to be mindful of the words we say, as if we are saying that a queer person just existing is a threat to children.
No one should have the right in this society to say, you want to sleep with my child and I have nothing to say about it because it is enshrined in law. No, we will not open that door. Why? Our children need to be protected.
As a queer person, I'm not responsible for coming to your home and telling you, Pastor T, this program airs this, don't show your child. That is not my responsibility. That will be as much as me imposing in your home and how you run your things. But why is then the problem transferred to LGBTQ people?
A lot of these stories come from the church where when they ask somebody what happens to them, somebody who is gay, they ask what happened to them, and it's because they were abused and all these things. So now it is almost like corrective. I was raped by a woman. I didn't become gay.
Mimi nitamaliza tu kuongea na Mbogi ya Kenya. Hizi ni siku za mwisho. Mwenye ana macho tu anacheki. Zilipoeleza hivi. So ni hivyo na musema hivi, wale wameamua kuwa malele na wale wameamua kuwa mage, waipige fiti. Lakini wasikuje church watuambie ni tuna identify.
A very good morning to you and a warm welcome to this special edition of LNS. My name is Lynn Ngugi. Now they say a promise is a debt, and here I am. Part 2 of the much awaited conversation, and I am so honored to have people here who have also interacted with before, and we said even before we started this conversation, we are here to have a fruitful conversation. So we are going to keep it respectful, and thank you so much for your views on our part 1 of this conversation. Guys, I love that we are having these talks. I love that we are trying to create awareness. I love that we are giving everyone a space to be able to talk about their own life with zero judgment. And I know this is the only way we can be able to progress our nation. And I'm also really eager to hear what you have to say. So, on the comment section, leave your views. Keep it respectful, guys. And now I will not say much. Please, without further ado, please allow me to let my incredible guests introduce themselves. Good morning.
Good morning.
Where do I start? Anywhere. So, ladies first. All right, please go.
All right. Good morning, and really glad to be back here.
Yeah.
My name is Antonina Ache.
Yes.
I'm a mother of 4 children, and I'm here because I'm passionate about conversations that deal with family and values.
Yes.
And I have been a chaplain and served in an institution for the last 24 years. And so it is my joy to be able to be back here and discuss further on this very pertinent conversation.
Yeah, really nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Yes, and for the purpose of before the rest introduce themselves, I did say on the last one that I would put your social handles. So if you can also tell us your social handles or a way someone can contact you, so it appears with your name right here before I forget again.
All right.
Yes.
So I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, Antonina Ache.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, next, it's free.
So my name is Mary Liz Biubwa.
Yeah.
I am a human rights activist and defender, and I also would like to refer to myself as a Black, queer, radical, angry, intersectional feminist.
Yes.
And those are very particular because, going by Maandamano Monday and Thursday and all the Maandamanos to come, we have every reason to be angry as Kenyans because of everything that is happening. I work on children's and women's rights, but particularly for the last 7-8 years going, I work particularly on LGBTQ rights in this country. And I'm happy to be here to have this conversation, because one of the reasons I actually even tagged you in the things that I was posting is because I felt really frustrated by the trajectory the conversation last time was taking. And it's very, very fundamental that when we are speaking about conversations about people, we base our conversations on the proper laws and guidelines that, you know, guide us as a country. And so I felt it's important for us to be here today to be able to have that conversation. And I'm excited to see what this is all about. And there is something he said, we are not we are all friends and all that kind of stuff. I like to say we don't have to be friends. We just don't have to be hateful and, you know, treat each other badly. We can have conversations without being friends, but we can have very civil conversations.
Okay, powerful. What are your handles? I don't want to forget this part.
I use, if you click my name Release Biubo, you'll find me everywhere, but for purposes of specificity, on YouTube I am Biubo and Kat, on Instagram I'm Biubo and Kat, on Facebook I'm Biubo Release, on Instagram, on Twitter and TikTok I am Queerly So.
Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you. Really nice to have you, and thank you for honoring the request to be part of this conversation. I want to know where, according to you, we went wrong on the last conversation, and I can't wait to hear these views. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn, for having me here. Thank you for holding the space. My name is Imungu Kalevera. I am a women's rights expert. I am a gender development and inclusion specialist, and I'm a Pan-African feminist. I'm very happy to be here. And also, like Mary-Liz, I had some concerns with the last conversation, and I'm hoping that here today we can have a broader one and really unpack, are there things that we misunderstood that we'd like to understand today?
Okay, great. Handles?
So I'm not super active on socials, but I'm not on TikTok and everything like Mary-Liz. Of course, she's a radical activist, and I appreciate that. But I can be reached on email, ekalevera@yahoo.com. And I'm fairly responsive on email.
All right, that's wonderful. Yeah. Pasi?
Yes, Pastor Tim Mwangi. Now people are using the word radical. I'm a radical believer, follower of the Bible, and a preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm passionate. I'm a father. Allow me not to sit just as a pastor. Sometimes people tend to weaponize religion. So I'm a father with a daughter and a boy, and I'm an activist to live a Kenya where they can grow in terms of values. Yes.
You come highly recommended on the comment section, Pastor. I like, you know, sometimes when they ask me to do something, I like doing it because they are the consumers of our product. Na tumetoka mbali. So for everyone that requested for Pastor T, there he goes. Asante sana. I know nimekusumbua sana, but thank you for always honoring my request.
It's a blessing.
Anytime I ask you to be part of the conversation. You know, they say energy is energy. So karibu sana. Yes. Handles?
Pastor Tim Mwangi everywhere. Pastor Tim Mwangi, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. Tim Mwangi.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, awesome. So my name is Tim Simon Bambu Kimani, former Msanii artist. I'm an author, also businessman, husband to Erica Kimani, and father of two very beautiful children, a boy and a girl. I'm a Bible activist, but I wasn't always one. I was a hip hop head. I grew up in the US, so I was, you know, hip hop was ingrained in my blood. I have a history in Hollywood, so, you know, I think I'll be kind of bringing a bit of that perspective. I'm an author also of the book, The Truth About Money. And I need to give all you guys a free copy, by the way.
Or give us money. Give us money. Give us the money.
I might do that too.
Stop it! I'm all here for the money.
Stop it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. By the way, it's an honor to be here. And I converted to Christianity when I found out, you know, what's really going on in Hollywood, and how it's such a demonic, satanic agenda that's bigger than, just giftings and talents and whatever we were passionate about. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about us. It was bigger than us. So, I come from that background.
Yes.
So, yes.
Really nice to have you.
Thank you.
I was just telling him earlier, I have looked for this man for so long, and I kept saying, when time is right, God makes everything beautiful. So welcome, and thank you so much for making time.
I was your fan growing up, so now I'm here wondering, Kumbe, that's where you disappeared. Because I'm trying to remember your song that I knew word for word, and be like,
which one is that?
I'm trying to remember the title.
Okay, no, you wouldn't.
Eventually we would, because I mean, YouTube is right here.
Yes.
I can search Bamboo and I can tell you which song that is.
Yeah.
So let's be done here. But
good.
I wouldn't even have known it was you before you introduced yourself.
Yes.
Because I've always wondered where you went to, but also just because you're a celebrity, or does it mean we're entitled to where you are and all that kind of stuff. So just appreciating that. So hearing that, I'm like, oh,
Bamboo. Yes.
That's where you went to.
Yeah. Karibu sana. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. My man.
Yeah, my name is Onyango Otieno. I'm also known as Rix. It's my stage name. I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I'm a mental health activist. I work with sexually abused boys and men. I run a safe space for them. I use storytelling for healing and connection, especially in regards to conversations around sexuality, masculinity, and childhood trauma.
Okay.
As somebody who grew up in a very violent home, and the many traumas that came out of that, and having to understand how there's so much violence in our culture that ends up informing even how we see life, how we behave, how we parent, how we do all these things, how we show up in relationships. I felt as a creative, as an artist, as an activist, my work is to go deep into the places my society does not understand and create a language so that I can make people understand in their consciousness that we are so much more than how we were taught to be in many aspects of life, but also to enable us to be more curious about the human experience beyond what we always have thought is right, Yeah, so I write also a lot about sex because it's a subject that has been,
Yes.
And for me, I got to a place in my life and I asked myself, why am I fearing? Why am I living in fear? And why is it that I'm not even being taught to even love my own body, So I love having these bold conversations, and I guess with the first time when you put out the video on Instagram, I did share my comments there, and I mean, it solicited a lot of conversation as well. And it's a beautiful day that I'm here. I must also say I grew up as a really staunch fan of Bamboo and Pastor T as well. I think early 2010 those years. And so it's just appreciative of their gifts for what they're doing also with their lives. And thank you for good to see you again.
Good to see you too. And thank you for honoring the request to be part of this conversation. I realize I've forgotten to ask what your handles are. So maybe you can give us your handles, then Bamboo can give us his handles.
Rix Poet on Instagram and Twitter, that's RIX Poet, Onyango Otieno, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Okay.
Yes, so on Twitter it's The Real Bamboo.
Yeah.
And Instagram, it's Bamboo the Hip Hop Prophet.
Yes.
Yeah, and on YouTube, you can find us at Life is Spiritual.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
doing
the name
great
of
work there with your lady.
Thank you.
I consume the content, so thank you so much, guys. I want to get straight into the conversation of the day. Pastor T, you have introduced yourself as a radical man of God, a father and a husband. What is your stand on the LGBTQ community?
When I got born again, I identified with the kingdom, which is the kingdom of light. Finally, fully dictated by the scriptures. When you say you're born again, you are mandated to obey what is written. Jesus said, them that love me obey my word. And the scripture stand is very clear. God created a man and a woman, and the union should be between a man and a woman for prosperity, for children, for a godly seed, and that is the engagement. So my stand is the stand of the Bible, because I'm first a believer before anything else. And that's the stand of the Bible. And it's very clear also prophetically in the book of Luke chapter number 17 from verse 26 going on, when Jesus gave the predictions of the second coming. We need to get clearly, the Bible is one of the undisputed prophetic book. Even secular writers and readers will tell you, when you read the prophecies, predictions, if they want to call that, it's very clear. He spoke as it was. Two scenarios, the days of Noah and the days of Lot. Now, the first scenario of what we might consider LGBTQ scenario is in the book of Genesis chapter number 19, where a whole community was gay. And the angels get in that community and the men want to sodomize them. Hence the name Sodom and Gomorrah. And judgment came, fire came. So when I do a diagnosis of that particular scenario, it creates a very prophetic environment of the time, the spirit, and the age we are living in. Because since the death of Jesus 2,000 years ago, we've never had a conversation of LGBTQ like now. So we must ask our question, why now? Why is it being funded? Why is it becoming so popular? Could we be dealing with something beyond logic, behavior, and deal with the spirit of the age? So I'll be here possibly to just have that conversation, give a spiritual view concerning the matter, and even engage even from an intellectual view. So my view is it's anti-God, and anything that is anti-God is paraphrased under what we call the Antichrist spirit, which is an end-time spirit. Yeah.
All right. Antonina.
Yes.
What is your stand here?
My stand is, because your question was very specific about the LGBT community.
Yes.
And my take is, from having interacted with particular people, especially young people, who have gone through certain abusive realities, it made me research a little bit further to understand what is really happening. And you may remember, I usually make this statement a lot: step back and ask yourself what is really happening. So from a place of individuals, my take is that individuals who are broken and hurting and are in that space need to be rescued, need to be approached with compassion, need to be seen as victims of something beyond them. And so the approach that I believe Jesus would have towards them is that one of, let's cover you, but let's get you sorted. Let's get you healed and whole. Let's have probably, if it is in a facility, or conversations that can get you out, because they're literally crying out for help. Nevertheless, in addition to that, I came to realize this is bigger. This is so much bigger. There is a systemic intention to change how families work, how marriages work. Behind it is a very diabolical agenda that is geared towards depopulation. And how do you emasculate and depopulate a people? It is, you go to that unit that brings forth and is entrusted with, procreation, and make sure that you turn things around. So that there is now a system. And this is what I have been an advocate for, that let's understand that even God is against that system. That system that gets people to abuse others so that they end up as victims, the first category that I talked about. This system where you will find people who are pro a certain agenda, but they themselves may not even be into it, because you will hear they're married, heterosexual marriages. You will hear they want to adopt babies, but they are pro a system that destroys the very idea and the very unit, the very safe, sacred unit where children should be brought forth, cared for, raised, and empowered. So that system is an enemy. And anyone who's watching this for the first time, I would encourage, revisiting the part 1, because Dr. Eda belabored the fact that this conversation wasn't there forever, all right? But beginning the 1960s, some people crafted and conjured up a conversation and determined we will fund this, we will, we're even going to go forceful so that we change the laws of given lands. And really, that's why we're here. Mm-hmm. We're not here in 2022. Why? Because something happened in 2023, not very long ago, where the Supreme Court determined a certain judgment that got people who care about families and life agitated and concerned that why would you even revisit the Constitution to change certain terminology? So that is my two-pronged approach on this. Mm-hmm. And for the system, I have no kindness. It is to vehemently resist it and to call on anyone who cares for children, anyone who believes in family and values and virtues, calling on all African people to say this system is an enemy, and anyone who is oiling it, anyone who's funding it, anyone who's advocating it, they need to be called out and be done, confronted as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And this conversation in our laws, the legislative processes, whatever is happening in the courts, there shouldn't be activism towards that which we know, even as Kenyans, this is criminal.
Thank you. Bambu, what's your stand?
My stand is, like Pastor T said, is biblical. It is based on the scriptures, which were written over thousands of years. My stand is also from a background of the entertainment scene and the power of influence that music, entertainment, movies, series, and what have you has on the general public. Mm-hmm. As you know, from being an artist myself and an entertainer and a writer and a creator and a producer and an innovator, I understand the power that we wield as such, and we can create the kind of societies we want, literally. And so from a background of growing up in the United States and having had a very violent confrontation with homosexual people, guys, they actually beat me up when I was about 12 years old. And these are people who were probably 24, 25 years old, and I was just a young boy. But these gay guys beat me to a pulp. Like, I've never been beaten like that since that time till this day. And they actually broke my nose. Till this day, my nose has it. Can you see like a little bump on my nose? Yeah, it never quite healed properly. My heart healed, and as a Christian, I learned to forgive them. But the mark remained on my face as a reminder that this is not a gentle movement. They are not victims, and they are not gentle. They are extremely violent, and they will impose their will upon society, and they will stop at nothing. Mm-hmm. They are relentless, and the spirit behind it is evil. It is dark. Now, people who practice it might not understand this. They've just been inducted, they've been introduced, they hang out with people who are gay, and they'll find that these non-governmental organizations will fund them. The Rockefeller Foundation will fund them. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will fund them. They have limitless amounts of money. They'll pour money into this. However, they also need to know that when they find out that you're sick, when they find out that you have HIV, they'll turn their backs on you and they'll abandon you. As I recovered from that, as I became a Christian, as I learned what the music industry and the entertainment industry is about in the United States of America, that it wasn't about our talent, it wasn't about our gifts, it wasn't about our ability to write great records. It was about, can we push fornication? Can we push sex to children? Can we get 14 and 15-year-olds to have sex so that they get pregnant, start taking, like Acheng said, start taking pills? Can we sell them what do we call it? Can we sell them condoms? Can we sell them pills? Can we get them to have 5 or 6 abortions by the time they're 18 years old? If we can get more abortions out of them, we can get their fetuses. It's a nefarious industry. It is a ruthless cycle. It does not stop. So, my background is more, and even more so on the spiritual aspect of it, because life itself is spiritual. One of the things that you learn as a Christian and as a believer is that the physical world is dominated by spiritual influences. There is a spirit realm and there is a physical world. And oftentimes we as human beings interact with that spiritual realm through our dreams. We're able to see it. We're able to witness it in our dreams. When we wake up in the physical world, we say, wow, that was a crazy dream. But that was an indication of what is happening to you spiritually. And that's God's way of communicating with you. Oftentimes he communicates through dreams. And so my background is that, more or less. And I think, Kenyans came to know me because of songs like Kompe. Guys came to know me because
that's the song.
Yeah. And so having released that music and gone back to the States, I grew up in the States. I came to Kenya when I was about 15. I went back to the States, worked in Hollywood. I got to interact with some of the biggest stars like Akon and just worked in what we call P1 cities, like in Atlanta. Those are cities that can influence the whole world in terms of music and culture. P1 cities is like New York, that can influence the whole world in terms of music and culture. Los Angeles is another one. I worked in all 3 cities. So I understand what this monster is and what it can become. I'm not against any people. I don't believe in being against people. I don't believe that any kind of violence should be done against any person because of their sexual orientation or because of what they believe or what have you. I don't believe that they should be denied rights because of their sexual orientation. I do believe in the rule of law, that people should all obey the rule of law, and that we should respect different cultures that come from different nations. But the spiritual aspect of this is that it will grow. What we're looking at in Kenya, it's in its baby stages. In America, it's a full-grown adult. And gay rights, it will go beyond just their right to associate. It will go beyond just their right to be recognized. It will go into, we are going to teach your children, we're going to put gay sex in children's books. We are going to cultivate a culture of confusion where a child does not know whether he's male or female. We are going to create more species, more genders. We are going to remove God vehemently out of culture completely. Their goal is to remove the thought and the memory of God, especially and specifically the name of Jesus, to remove it completely and replace it with an anti-Christ culture to prepare the world for the coming of a one world government and a one world leader who himself is also, according to Daniel 11:37, a homosexual. So what we're seeing is the ongoing movement and human progress toward that nefarious goal of gathering the entire world under a United Nations and one world government under one leader who is himself a homosexual and needs that energy to be in societies around the world so that he can rule.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Wow. Today everyone is calm. Okay. Yes. Should we go this way or you want to take it maybe here, Calavera?
Yeah, so my stand on LGBTQ rights is really to center the conversation in terms of human rights.
Yes.
I think there are very many things we can disagree on. Maybe I'm a Christian or I'm not, I'm a Muslim or I'm not, I'm Baha'i, I'm not, I'm a Jew, I'm not, I'm black or I'm white. But before we are any of these things, the one thing we can all agree on is that we are human first. And while I respect other people's religious views and religious inclinations, I am also very aware that sometimes these views and these inclinations lead to hateful words. Hateful words beget hateful actions beget hateful mindsets, which beget hateful structures and then systems. And I've heard the word about like there's an agenda, that there's a push. And really, the thing that I see in terms of queer people, maybe their only agenda that exists is that they want their full human rights and to be able to experience their full human rights. Bamboo, you have said that you have nothing against people exercising their rights. And in the same vein, you've said that, oh, the freedom of association right is just the beginning. So what I'm hearing people say is that we will deny you your rights because we are afraid of a thing that we have not yet seen. And I think we are constructing a lot around this agenda that really doesn't exist. And something that I hear a lot is this conflating of queer people and protecting our children. And I think we need to be mindful of the words we say, as if we are saying that a queer person just existing is a threat to children. And that is absolutely not true. Someone who abuses children because of their own proclivities, because of maybe something that happened in their past, because of maybe something that happened in their adulthood. But that does not mean that a queer person existing in the world in their fullness means that they are a threat to your child. And I think we need to push back against some of these falsehoods that are being spread because they actually have a real impact on people's lives. Queer people are more likely to face physical violence. And I've heard your story about facing physical violence from queer people, but they did not attack you because they are queer people. They attacked you because they are maybe hateful people, because they had their own agenda, because they did not respect your humanity. So I think it comes back to respecting other people's humanity before we say we are different or we are the same. We are first of all humans. So to the Supreme Court ruling that you've just mentioned, that Supreme Court ruling was 10 years in the making. In the beginning, it was not ruled in the favor of the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission. But really, if you read the judgment, one of the things that the judges say is that this ruling is meant to protect the rights and freedoms of association under Article 36 of the Constitution. Really, that's it. You know, I know maybe for Christians, they would love a world where the Bible is the governing document for everything. But unfortunately, that is not the world that we live in currently. We live in a world where we are bound to coexist. And if we don't coexist, we shall destroy each other. So mine is not to say that if you're a Christian, you must do something or you must support the queer movement. But mine is to say, do you see that this is first and fundamentally a rights-based conversation? And that when you spread falsehoods about people being dangerous to children, you actually take yourself away from protecting children from the actual people who are dangerous to them. So if we are going to look at the systems and the bigger conversation, we need to look at the right place. And the right place is not saying, oh, if I limit your rights, then I will experience my full right. That's not how a society works. And a society that goes about oppressing the most minoritized people, one day it will be them and the next day it will be you. I would much rather live in a society where even the most minoritized people are able to experience their full rights and live out their full identity than live in a society where it's underpinned by hate and falsehoods and violence that decides, oh, you people are expendable. You can be let go of. And then one day it will be them, and then the next day it will be you, because no one is safe in a society that denies the minorities their rights. And really, that's my opinion at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. Rix?
Now, as I am an ally for
Yes.
the LGBTQIA community, as somebody who grew up in a church, and my parents were believers. Myself, by that extension, I grew up in a Christian home. And one of the most confusing things was I used to see as though there was faith and then there was real life. They were barely ever together. Of course, there were certain components like fellowship, which I love very much, like community, like music, which I love very much. But when it came to values, things were not always together. And I started questioning from a very young age because, again, of not only what I saw with my dad at home or how sometimes also my mom was violent, but also my neighborhood, my culture, what I saw on TV and all those things. So when I began questioning, in my early life, I also was very, I didn't condone the idea of gayism as well. I didn't condone all those things because of the foundation that the church gave me, or Christianity gave me for that matter. But then I got to a point of my life and I asked myself, why am I carrying this burden? I also used to like fear, oh, so now they'll be everywhere on TV, the billboards, will be gayism everywhere and everything. And at some point, actually, I think this was around 2011, 2012, like some entertainment series started, like we started watching actually on TV, like gayism was like probably more prominent. And I was uncomfortable at the time, just seeing that. I was like, oh, this goes way much against what I think is right. But then as I'm growing as a person, I'm asking myself, why am I carrying this burden of telling people this is what they must be, And as I grew up, then I asked myself, who am I when I'm not reading a Bible? Who am I when I am not identifying as a Christian? Will I be loving still? Will I be caring still? Will I be kind still? And the fact that I was also not taught the history of that Bible itself and how it came to be. The history of that Christianity was not really taught to me as a believer, as it is for most believers as well. You're just given this thing, you have to take it and all that. But when it comes to matters around sexuality, what I came to learn is that we have a very limited understanding of who human beings really are. Because we run with one major story, and the major story is the religious story, and most times from the Abrahamic religions, right? All of us, where the communities we come from, we all had our stories of origin, yeah? And if I'm a Luo, my origin did not have to clash with the Merus. It didn't have to clash with the Gikoyus. It didn't have to clash with the Turkanas. I just appreciated, that's the story of your people, cool, Now, when I think about how nature is, many times we think of nature as a very binary concept, where it's just male and female, black, white, and all that. But if you walked into a natural forest, for example, there are trees of all kinds of species. Nature by design is diverse, Nature by design is diverse. So even with human beings, not only will races be different, not only will cultures be different, not only will mannerisms and personality be different. Before we think of any religion or anything, just nature itself, it also means just by design, sexualities will also be different without thinking too much about it. You know what I mean? So I figured, man, I don't need to come to you and tell you you must identify as this or that, But if you're being violent, for example, and even the idea of violence as well, I feel like what I'm struggling with the most in this LGBT conversation and in our country, Christianity, and even like other major religions, is the idea around like if you identify as queer, then you're posing a threat to family values, and then you say, hey, this is not African culture, right? Without appreciating that queer people existed in Africa before the concept of Christianity got here as well, before the concept of religion got here as well. The same way many of our stories were taken away from us is also the same way we are not aware that queer people existed here. And if I go by the fact that nature is also diverse everywhere, queer people existed everywhere, okay? So, as time goes by, when we talk about how minority groups are vandalized, I would say, not even just oppressed, they are vandalized. And in our idea, like in real life, we start with what we see first. It's women who are being oppressed as a quote unquote minority group, and then it trickles down to black, white people, and then in other ways it goes to religious and non-religious people, and then in other ways it goes to heterosexuals and gay people. It goes to all these lenses. Now, if I come to you, Lynn, and I assume that what I know is what must be right, and you say because you know you are right, then I cannot go to hospital and get treatment. I cannot get a job. I cannot marry somebody whom I am choosing, because as Pastor T said, the first contact of homosexuality in the Bible was actually abuse. It was from abuse. It was not consent, for sure. The same way Bamboo experienced it. It wasn't consent. It was abuse. We need to call it for what it was. It was abuse. It wasn't because these people are homosexuals, then now they're using this homosexuality to gain dominance over people. That is a violent act. You get what I mean? The same way heterosexuals also are very violent in many, many, many other ways that we must lose sleep for. And me, I'm saying, I wish this same verve that a religion has used against homosexual people or the queer people, I wish we would also lose sleep, over how the number of injustices that everyday people are going through in this country and in this world. I wish it was like with the same verve. And not to say that Christianity is not doing its part or religious people are not doing their part, because there have been lobby groups for that, and in their day-to-day lives, yes, there are ways that which they try to stand up for what is right. But it's the idea that I can control how much you can enjoy in your life by me saying that this is evil and I'm the one who holds what is right. It is not upon me. And I would actually still like to borrow from the same text that says, however much you have, if you're not operating from a place of love, all of it is nothing, really. Yeah.
And that's your stand.
Yes.
Yes, Marilyn.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I think for me, the first thing I would like to say is to first affirm that, yes, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. I identify as lesbian and non-binary person. And essentially, my two colleagues have covered most of it, but my stand is essentially born off of the fact that listening to their experiences, both of them, all of them, their experiences, their beliefs are informed by their experiences, which is 100% a human nature thing, right? Went through your experiences and your experiences brought you there. But in the same breath, they use those experiences to take away from LGBTQ people having their own experiences. First off, there's this conversation, and even in the last conversation she highlighted, Achieng highlighted hugely about, an agenda to, first of all, I don't believe there's anything wrong with having an agenda. If you didn't have an agenda, we wouldn't be here. So I believe life in general is about agendas. If we didn't have an agenda, we all wouldn't have woken up to come here today. We wouldn't have woken up to go do our business today, right? We woke up with an agenda. So having an agenda is absolutely okay. But understanding what the agenda is where we all miss the mark completely with the LGBTQ community. Because I've had her say several times about organizations, and he also mentioned some, Melinda Gates and Rockefeller and all that kind of stuff, and that they fund people to be LGBTQ. Even sometimes some of them are not even LGBTQ and all that kind of stuff. And I constantly ask myself, and I need human beings to begin asking themselves questions. Why will Melinda Gates fund people who are not even gay, while Mary Liz is here gay and I'm not funded? Like literally, it's about to be end of month and I'm gonna hustle really hard to get my rent, right? If I was gonna be funded truly, and I want to ask all of us here genuinely, if it's true that queer people are being funded to be who we are, right? Do you think I'd be here having conversation with you? I don't think I'd be here. I'd probably be traveling somewhere because I have money, I'm being funded, right? But the reason I come here to have conversation is because the reality has been painted versus the reality, the way things happen on the ground are totally different. And all of it zeroes down to it's okay for us to have religious beliefs for those who have them, because I'm not a Christian, I don't have religious beliefs, I'm neither an atheist, I'm a human being, and I believe totally in the concept of I live, you live, you have a right to life, your right to life is reliant on me ensuring that you actually exercise it, and mine relies on you ensuring that I exercise mine. Right? And that is like literally the basic of humanity. That if I'm a criminal, I'm rendering risks unsafe. And that's that on that. And so looking at it from that perspective, religious people can have their beliefs. I'm a queer person who doesn't have religious beliefs, but a lot of other queer people believe in God, they go to church and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't invalidate their existence as human beings, right? And so the one thing that I've been asking myself, and if you interact with me on my social media, you would see I said recently, the thing that makes me struggle with religion, or rather that made me struggle with religion so much until I realized I don't want to associate myself with that institution, is the fact that religion makes it comfortable for aspects of abuse and justification of it, right? For example, I'll use the Catholic Church as a person who grew up in a Catholic church. For years on end, we've had so many stories of rapists and pedophiles who are priests and pastors, right? Is it a matching experience that most of the times, these pastors and priests, whoever they targeted were altar boys? Because altar boys served, if you grew up in Catholic, altar boys are those young boys who serve as, people who helped the priest to get the service running and all that kind of stuff. And most of these, in 2012 or 2013, we had a Facebook conversation and people were coming out with confessions. Boys coming out with confessions about how different priests in different churches, were pedophiles and sexually defiled them and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't match the statistics that all these priests and all these victims who went through all this abuse are gay now. That's first and foremost, right? Because just because you've gone through any kind of abuse, which spills over to the next point that I want to say, and I also had it in the previous conversation, using people's abusive experiences to invalidate their humanity as human beings. I'm a queer person. Rix is a heterosexual person. Bamboo is a heterosexual person. Bamboo went through abuse, beaten up by people who later he came to realize are gay people and all that kind of stuff. Nothing takes away from the fact that Bamboo went through violence, and the people who beat him, whether they were gay, whether they were... at the end of the day, the law should take its course, not because these people are gay, but because these people are violent. The law should take its course on anyone who was an abuser to someone, not because of the sexuality of a person. Because just because I'm a queer person doesn't mean anyone should come and arrest me because I'm queer. I'm not an abuser. I've worked with children in different schools across the country. There's no day my name has come up as being an abuser or recruiting or having conversations with kids about being gay and anything like that. And my work is guaranteed, my work is seen. I go through authority positions and all that kind of stuff, and I talk to these people and I have conversation with them. My sexuality is mine. It has nothing to do with people. Information, however, another conversation, misinformation. We talk a lot about these things, but we talk about them from a point of misinformation. We consume what we want to consume because of our beliefs, which is absolutely okay, but we forget, Lynn, if I believe 1 + 1 is 2, doesn't mean I should walk around the world thinking everyone believes the same thing. Because apparently with the love and the church, they believe 1 + 1 is 1. Because when you get married to your partner, you become one. That's what they normally say, right? But in mathematically, 1 + 1 is 2. And that is scientific proof. But everyone has their belief everyone has their opinion according to what they believe in. Yeah. And that's absolutely okay. But why should your belief criminalize another person? That brings me to another thing. Again, as Achieng was speaking, she highlighted hugely about religion and the standpoint of religion and God and all that kind of stuff. And then she went ahead to say it's criminal in the Constitution. The double standard of it all. Kenya is a country that is guided by the Constitution. Yes, many people are believers, absolutely right, yeah? But that doesn't mean if I commit a crime today, a pastor will come and arrest me. A pastor can't arrest me. It's a police who will come and arrest me, right? A police will take me to a police station or to jail or to whatever it is I'll be taken. But it will be through a legal process. It won't be through a religious process. Anyone can come with their opinions and beliefs, but it will be through a legal process that I'll be told Mary-Liz committed this crime, Mary-Liz is guilty of this crime, Mary-Liz has to appear in court, that Mary-Liz has been sentenced and Mary-Liz will go to jail for this crime. Up to that point, we agree. And up to that point, this country has made a lot of stride with regards to litigation and law about the same. As Kalevera had pointed out, this case by Nigel Hack had been in court for the last 10 years. She said this conversation is happening now because it just has happened in 2023. But that's not true. The only difference is that the rulings in the past, most of them have been against the LGBTQ community. Another evidence that most of the time when we base our opinions on religion, religion is comfortable with abuse. Because every time all these rulings happen that criminalize LGBTQ people, we die. That's the saddest part about it. It's not just a ruling. It's a ruling that gives people power. And I can't tell you the amount of people who have gone through violence since this ruling we had recently. And the worst part is we can't even report it anywhere, because if you go to the police with how heightened things are at the moment, you could end up being an even further victim of a lot of things, disappearing and all that kind of stuff. And we are not trying to put ourselves through those things. Now, there could be organizations that come up with their agendas, and that's absolutely okay. But that should not take away from a human being and their experience to life, right? And that is founded on, I live in this world, you live in this world. We are all human beings. You could have your Christian beliefs and all that kind of stuff, absolutely. But in the eyes of law, they don't matter, because the law is not justified by religion. I don't think in the Constitution there's anywhere where it says the reason we have this law is because Luke chapter so and so said ABCD. It purely says because if we don't have this, this is a violation of human rights. And so 10 years that case had been in court. In 2019, the ruling on that case was made. When the ruling was made, it was in favor of the LGBTQ community to have right to association. Guess who went to court to petition it? It was the NGO board. We like saying organizations fund this work and all that. But NGO board, we know it's literally all organizations in Kenya under that umbrella, right? And they went in court and they opposed it. And then it had to be taken back to court. That time it was a bench of 7 judges. This time it was a bench of 3 judges. And they went through the nitty-gritties of the whole conversation and all that kind of stuff. And in truth, we all do have rights to associate. Lynn, right now we are associating. Do you know if that was not passed, it would be criminal for you to have us here? Do you know that? But in reality, is it criminal for us to be here? It's not criminal, because I'm not doing anything here. I don't think I'm here telling you, come with your children. I'm trying to take your children and go recruit them in something. I don't think any of that conversation came up. And so that ruling was necessary because of that. And so 2019, that happened, and then recently now the ruling came out in favor to allow people right to association. But even before that, we've had different rulings. And that is where I find a problem with everything. For us LGBTQ people, any oppression that we face, we don't take it up with attacking people and abusing people. And he used the term saying, this movement is very violent. Show me the violence we do. Because I don't think, and I will honestly 100% believe, it's not wrong. If I see someone and I like them and I tell them I like them, if they don't like me, they just have to tell me I don't like you. Or I am straight. For example, I am straight, I don't like you, right? Because the opposite is also true.
Yes.
I'm glad she said show me with the violence. Yeah. And I'll just give this quick answer real quick, and then you can continue. Okay. You said show me the violence.
No,
I'll just show you a quick example.
Just a second. I'm a believer of, when they were talking, I was silent. Yes, I'm a believer. Take notes and then respond when it's your turn to speak, so that I can speak.
I'm gonna pick it with you immediately she's done.
So the whole idea of violence is if a lesbian, for example, rapes someone, or if a gay man rapes someone, I'm not gonna sit here and be the one to say he's gay, leave him alone. I'm going to be the one on the front line also saying, just because you're gay doesn't mean you're free from abusing someone, because that was abuse. And me, being a queer person, doesn't make me immune to consequences of abuse. If I abuse someone, I have to go through the full force of law. And that is the truth on that. And if that is what we are going to categorize as violence, then like Kalevera said, Drix said, and I'm going to say, everyone has experienced violence at some point, and everyone has sometimes even perpetrated violence at some point. And we all have to be held accountable because of that. And all these rulings that are there in place because of so many things. Because also constitutionally, there's no way it says it's wrong for me to come out and say maybe I'm gay. There's everything wrong according to the Constitution, Article 162, 163, and 165 of the Penal Code that criminalizes same-sex intimacy, right? And that is what is criminal. And for that to happen, I have to be caught in the act, because also in 2019, in a court, I think in Mombasa or Malindi, one or the other, had a ruling that said it's wrong to take people through the tests for carnal knowledge, where I see you, and because I tell you I am a lesbian, you take me to be tested, to be checked, or a man tells you he's a gay man, you take them to the hospital, because that is breach of people's privacy and all that kind of stuff. We have litigation, we have laws in place, we have all that kind of stuff. And the reason I think Kenyans are all up in flames at the moment is because for the first time, a ruling has been made, it was made public, and then when it was made public, even without them understanding it, because there's also a lot of butchering of everything, including William Samoei Ruto, the president of this country. He went ahead intentionally, a person we pay through our taxes, and we pay all the labor that works around him to afford proper lawyers, to afford people who can take him through the process of understanding a legal document. And he failed to do that, and he came out to say words that are going to put the lives of a majority of, of a section of people in this country in danger, because by him saying, Kenya is not a country where we'll allow same-sex marriage. The ruling wasn't about same-sex marriage. That is a whole conversation that even as the LGBTQ community, if you go from organization to organization and check their mandate for the next 20 years, they don't have same-sex marriage in their mandate. Because that is something that we have to work towards. There's other more important rights, like access to healthcare services, like access to right to life, because I've had to stay in my house and literally just tell people, if I'm going to show up to somewhere, make sure it's a private place that I can guarantee my safety. I've had to go on back and forth with my partner because of not having security and her getting messages of threats and all that. Because why? Because a president, or because a nation, or because our neighboring country, Uganda, has now come up with bills that actually criminalize people and take the right to life of people. But also not only that, taking the right to life, your right to life, my right to life, your right to life for sitting here and having a conversation with me, because it basically says if you sit with these people, if you'll be looking like you're promoting and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, yes, people can have their beliefs. I have my own beliefs. I don't think anyone cares to ask queer people what beliefs they have. But we do have our own beliefs too, as human beings, right? But I don't walk around imposing. And we talk a lot about imposing. I think the biggest thing that human beings experience that was imposed is religion and God and the belief of all that. Because then, why is it that you believe your stand is right and every other stand that is different without necessarily being wrong is not right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's your stand.
Yeah.
I'm glad that now we all know what's everyone's stand. Pastor T, I saw you taking a lot of notes.
Because there's a lot of misinformation here.
There's a lot of I'm gonna let you react to that, but allow me to give you the opportunity. Where is the violence? That was her question.
Yes, she asked, where's the violence? Well, let's just take in point a recent heinous murder that took place, Mr. Chiloba, who perished. And sadly, and that was a travesty and a tragedy. When the public found out that he was dead, activists like Boniface Mwangi came out, and other activists were enraged against the Christian community. You animals, you beasts, how could you advocate for this man to be slain the way he was? Of course, we had nothing to do with it. And as the police investigated, it was discovered that Chiloba's homosexual lover was the one who killed him. And he didn't just kill him. His crime was especially heinous. He dismembered him and put him in a metal box and put him in a vehicle and went to a road somewhere and cast his body on the side of the road. I'm trying to show you the spirit of this thing, all right? There was outrage when people thought that it was Christians. But where did the outrage go when they found out that it was a homosexual? Where was the outrage from the LGBTQ community when they found out that one of their own had murdered one of their own? Boniface was suddenly quiet. The whole LGBTQ community, there was nobody, none of you tweeted a word about being enraged about the violence that takes place inside your own community.
And that's what they want to do. You see, they want to weaponize Christianity or faith to look like, you say you're a believer, it looks like you want to attack them. I really went through the ruling, the analysis from a legal point. I sat down with the lawyers and I asked them, And someone told me, when the church opposed the Constitution, part of that clause is what they were dealing with. You see, the law is very porous, and one word is enough to open a door. And they said this definition of discrimination against sex should be well defined, because sex has almost 6 definitions, one of them being orientation. And the judges used that exactly loophole. And we are talking here about an agenda being set before we even get to it. You know, some elite saw through. That is the door that was used to legalize same-sex marriage. I mean, LGBTQ in South Africa. It was one statement. Now, let us look at the escalation. I want to believe she said money has not been poured. My background is NGO. There are few proposals we'll write, and we're being told if you don't incorporate most at-risk population, we won't fund you. So there was mitigation. Right now, I can tell you, one of the leading organizations in Kenya, I was listening to her talk, and I can tell there is a training taking place. I won't mention the organization, but after this I can mention, because of legal procedures. There are trainings taking place. So that the community is trained on how to bring the conversation legally, not socially, legally, and speak from a rights perspective and ignore all these other fabrics. And money is being poured so that there's preparation. How do you respond in such an interview? In fact, in this meeting, the community wins. And I'll tell you why. This is a principle called advocacy. Let people talk about it. As they talk about it, let's release our statistics. You see, there is no violence. The church has not killed anyone, but there's a perspective the church is violent.
Yes.
We are just preaching the Bible. The same way we preach about corruption, we preach about forgiveness. We've not skipped a part. We preach the whole counsel. But there is that picking of, why are you talking about this? It's in the Bible. So, of course, you begin to see when this law was now interpreted, it has opened a door. And I know their legal team is very active. They're just waiting for the temperatures to go down. They will now go to the next step. Legally, the loophole is opened. It will be legalized. Same-sex marriage, anyone who knows law will tell you, if it's not now, it's a matter of time. Now, let's look at nations that have entered into that space. Now, when you go to the West, now Christianity is where the human rights are fighting for. Because you identify as a Christian, you already look violent. They've already managed to paint that perception that a Christian and anyone who identified with faith is violent and they don't care about our rights. I was just watching a clip online of a young man preaching in the streets. And a guy came and asked him, do you believe in gayism? He said, why are you asking me? He said, I don't believe because the Bible says so. He began to say, you see, this religion and now all this false history, or religion is a religion of war and all that. And always have a problem with human rights. And I'll tell you why. Uganda makes a ruling overnight. America goes live in State House and speaks about it.
Yes.
They've never spoken about the issues literally happening in Uganda. Children are dying because of this rebel who is forever in the forest. Right now, children are dying in Baragoi and all these insecurities. Chiloba dies. American state goes live on media and begins to condemn. And you're like, how partial is this right? That it looks like when something happens, an agenda you're trying to push, it becomes a human right. Yeah. But when it touches on other things, it's no longer a human right. And me doing my own research, I think the most contradicting document on this world is the human right philosophy. Yeah. It's one of the most contradicting, that I can be pregnant, I have the right of abortion, but that child does not have a right. It doesn't make sense. And I'll ask them to educate me, because I've tried to understand the right. A person goes as a suicide bomber, blows up the whole building. He's captured on CCTV. And then the rights come and say, you know what? He needs to go through the legal process. Nobody should touch him because he has rights. The man has killed almost 100 people. So I look at this partiality of rights and I'm like, okay, what's not happening? Is it exclusive and all that? So what we are trying to bring on board here, no one hates them. I want to sit here and tell you, I have members in my church that I'm working with from the LGBTQ community. And guess what? We went through the analysis. And the point was very simple. Which door was opened in your life? And majority of them, it is sexual abuse. Yes. Majority. Yes. Either someone was raped. I like what you said. You know, LGBTQ was there in our culture. Even rape was there. But this is how they dealt with it. And so when we look at this, we see that there are people genuinely, they will come and tell you, this is how I was reacting to my pain. And then you work with them and give them a platform to heal. And they begin to discover, by the way, it was a reaction of pain. The greatest analogy, I love reasoning. I sat down with a scientist and I asked him, sir, what's your take on LGBTQ? Let's leave the Bible. Let's talk science. What's your take? And he was like, even science don't understand. We can't explain how someone wants to date a man and forces the man to dress like a woman instead of dating the real woman, and vice versa. And he said even the structure, the bone structure of a human being, if we die here and we excavated when no flesh, no eye, no nothing, they will identify and say these are ladies and these are men. Because from the genesis of the analogy of your anatomy, you came as a certain species. You came as a certain gender. And that's why now we are coming on this other side. We are saying, listen, what? This is not just an attack on morals. This is war on the identity of our children. Yeah. When I sit where I sit, and my understanding, which I don't force on anyone, when I stand to preach to the populace, I preach my conviction, which is biblical. If you attack the identity of an individual, you have attacked their purpose and you have attacked their destiny. The battle begins in answering the question, who am I? Not because of what I've been told, not because of what I have read, but who am I discovering? You can't answer that question coming from a biblical point if the one who created you cannot tell you who you are, because it is the creator that gives identity to the object. Now I'm speaking from a biblical point. So ideally, when there is an attack of identity, and someone might begin to say, does sexuality give you an identity? Yes, I'm a man, and first of all, you identify as a man because of my sexuality. Yeah. We don't give the other story of the effects that come with the LGBTQ. I was reading a report from Mombasa where young people have to be lured into sleeping with Italians. Young boys, because of money, they are being paid. Yeah. And Italians want to have anal sex with them. And these young people, because the duct was not designed for anything. Of course, it's an abuse on their rights. But these are people going through poverty. So some few cartels lure them for that. Now, these are medical. In Kenya, a medical doctor who comes and tells me, Pastor, talk to these young people. Because when they end up having sex, their intestines come out through their anal duct. Yes. And once the intestines are out, they must cut. They must cut the intestines because they are designed to live in a certain environment. So who is propagating, inhuman? For me, I look at it and I'm like, where is the mercy? Where is the justice? I don't think the church has ever fought anyone. I don't think the church has ever banned anyone. If there is any scenario case, please bring it to us. In fact, you'll be so surprised that it is the locals, the communities, the elders, the ordinary people that are the ones who are like, no, these are not our values. And I can say here also, having gone to Europe, seeing the kind of thing that is happening and seeing whatever is happening, I can tell you the truth. We are so blessed as Africa to have values that advocate for family. We are so blessed as Africa to have a community and to have the kind of systems that are working. I don't know why someone doctrinated us and made us believe the West is the standard of morality. We are so blessed to have the things we hold dearly to us. We cannot use anyone's standard and try to make it look like this is life. And there is a confusion between civilization and abortion of values. Civilization is exposure to intelligence, but abortion of values is the first thing that kills it. And I'll end by saying, when you study the ancient Rome, and these are research that was done, nobody could bring down ancient Rome because of military power. Nobody. This was the superpower. That is the ancient Rome. Today, the globe is divided by the structures and the stratas of the ancient Rome. And what made ancient Rome fall was nothing but sexual perversion. 9 out of their 12 emperors were gay. Yes. That brought conspiracy and compromise in the emperor, and that's how Rome fell. This is history at play. We are living in a time now whereby even scientists are saying possibly in the next 1 billion years, humanity might enter into extinct because lesbian don't bring any fruition. So it's like we are entering into a compromise extinction, which is humanly generated by human beings. And we need to come to a place of having this heart-to-heart, not even from my convictions of faith, but from the place of what happened. I went to a school and they told me, we are so mad, you've condemned us. We are the gay and lesbian community here. And I told them, please tell me, because none of you was born like this. You chose to identify like this because something pushed you to this. I told them, out of these scenarios, were you abused when you were young? Do you come from a home that never functioned? Maybe your dad, your mom was abusive, and you went through a divorce and you're bitter. Are you a victim of pornography, watching pornography and addicted to it? Are you just curious? How does it feel to kiss a guy or kiss a chick? Or do you come from a background where you just had verbally abusive parents who spoke to you in a very verbal dimension? Or do you come from a home which is 100% strict, where your mom told you, staki mimba hapa hivi? And we had a conversation. I told them, no Bible, let's talk. And I was surprised, 90% of that team, everyone had an issue that had happened in their life that was not addressed. And now they began now to form a team out of pain. I won't lie to you. If we sit with the queer community, what they need is healing. You don't heal through identifying as a different person, because doors, when they are open spiritually, they don't need social understanding to close them. And the church does not hate them. If only they knew the church is the city of refuge. If only they knew the only office you can walk and get counsel is the church. I don't think we've ever discriminated any of them. But the church at the end of the day does not preach a different gospel. We have to say what is written.
Yes.
And what is written is our final standard.
And what is taking place? And she mentioned that it's almost as if we're paranoid that the LGBTQ movement is going to morph into something that we don't understand. Listen, coming from the United States, the LGBTQ spirit and movement has matured into its adult stage. Right now, if you identify yourself with a certain pronoun, maybe they, if I called you her, I can be penalized for that under the law. I can be sued. I can be thrown in jail. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? That this thing will morph into what it is in America. It's not going to morph into something else.
And even Bamboo, let me cut you short.
Yes.
Right now, pastors are being rejected licenses.
Yes.
Because they refuse to join weddings of the same people.
Yes.
Meaning that literally you are being told you can't operate as a pastor in this area.
Yes.
So we are still on the baby stages. Must we wait for that time when this thing, let me tell you, violence won't come from the church. Violence will come from you.
Yes.
That name human right, you'll say, this is my right. I have the right to get married. Why are you discriminating me? I'm a believer. This is my church. I want to get married. Then they'll come and tell me as a pastor, no, why are you discriminating them? You cannot discriminate against sex.
Yes.
That word will be misused. It has already been misused. And let us come to the consciousness of humanity. That for me is the end of the day. We can all be human rights issues activists. Where is the consciousness of humanity? The law of science says everyone is wired through a very systematic system called the law of morality. Put men in a jungle, they will come up with a system of life where they respect one another. Where are we losing this consciousness of humanity? Why can't we look at matters from brothers and sisters and just agree this is an escape route? This is not us.
And I want to just contribute, in addition to what has already been said, that, and I want to appeal especially to Onyango and the many others who are allies, because that is where really this conversation is at. When people make their choices of what they want to do with their lives, they have already made their choices, okay? But there is a huge population that is being moved by the emotions of woye. Let's be kind to these people. Let's be loving. Those are the emotions that are being appealed to. But there's something Bamboo said about removing God from the conversation. Because if we're going to address ourselves to any human rights are bequeathed to us by the Creator.
Yes.
Africans everywhere, Luos, Kikuyus, everybody, everywhere, north, south, east, west, and have this very solid understanding that there is a Creator God in heaven. Irrespective of what you call Him, there is a God. He is the one who determines what is right, what is wrong. He is the one who determines what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. He gives us human rights for posterity. Yeah. And Dr. Eda in the first part asked a question. If we have an island where the only people who are there are the queer people. 40 years, who will you have? The reality is that God gave sex for the posterity of the humankind. When you take out the standards that God has set, what you get is violence. It is violence for a man to enter another man in an exit. It is violence. And that is why if we were to go to the gory details of what people go through with that reality, anyone with a human heart, you will want to rescue them. It is so unfair for a woman to go with another woman. Why? When a baby is born, there is such rejoicing in the entire community. In the community I come from, they will ululate. What is the expectation? This child will grow, and one day they too will bring joy. In fact, a reality where there is no posterity, there is no getting children, it is looked at as, do we need to appeal to God? What do we need to do? Do we go to science? What do we do? Because children are the life of the posterity of a society. But here is a conversation claiming the term human rights. It is human right for humanity to continue on, generation after generation.
Yes.
If Sodom and Gomorrah were allowed to continue, and they somehow had ability to pervade, because that is the reality. Evil is pervasive. It's very forceful. It's very violent. It asserts itself. Exactly what we're saying in our reality right now. Let's not forget the genesis of this conversation. We are concerned that in 2010, when we passed the Constitution, we were guaranteed by the committee of experts that because a large population of Kenyans are saying this conduct is criminal, it should not be given the light of day. It should not even be, we shouldn't even be here having a conversation about it. Why are we having a conversation? Because right now the Supreme Court has ruled as it has. Is it against the majority of the will of the people in Kenya? Yes, it is. And this is the reality. And I'm calling on parents especially. Because when we finished part 1, there was a true fear that, you know what? This has started with the right of association. Tomorrow we'll see it in the media allowed to. Tomorrow we'll hear it in the CBC conversation. In our curriculum, it will be allowed. Why? Because one little step has been opened, the door that Pastor T is talking about. That little door, there will be such an effort to continue to push it. And it is very obvious, everyone here, the way we were brought up. You see a man and a man kissing on the screen, you wonder, yes, children shouldn't be here. So this is violence to children, to allow them to have certain conversations that they should be protected from. So if we're talking about human rights, let's take it from who is the giver of the human rights. And the same God who made us, like I said last time, he gave instructions. See, only go this far. The moment the sea crosses over to where human beings have built up their structures, there's trouble. There's death. There's, there's destruction. So this God has given definition. A woman should not sleep with a woman and burn with passion for a person of the same sex. The same thing with men. Men should not have sex with men. Just the same way he even goes ahead to say a man should not sleep with an animal. Those are animal rights. Okay, but right now we're already seeing an extension where a few weeks ago someone has gotten married to a dog. Okay, who is coming out to say that dog has rights? Was it consulted? All right, the dog knows better, and it knows male dog will never go after male dog. Just like male, a jogo will not go after a jogo. It doesn't happen. It's against the natural order. But right now, this conversation where it has begun, and I really felt for what Onyango was saying when he gave us his little history of how he grew up. And he mentioned that he wasn't even given a history of how the Bible came. Okay, and it's unfortunate that the handlers of biblical truth did not belabor or go the extra mile to help Onyango understand. This Bible is not Western material. This is where it has come from. This is what it does. It is actually the greatest advocate of human rights. And because we are seated here, there is a crime that is being legitimized. A crime in Kenya, we can mention so many, okay? But we are seated here because of one which goes against the values of family, goes against the values of humanity, goes to ensure that if we take this route, one day someone will come and say, Antonina, I want to have sex with your 4-year-old and you cannot stop me.
Yes.
Now I'm saying right now, all mamas, all daddies, that conversation I cannot stand. No one should have the right in this society to say you want to sleep with my child and I have nothing to say about it because it is enshrined in law. Right now, arise and say, no, we will not open that door. Why? Because my 4-year-old needs to be protected. My 15-year-old needs to be protected. Our children need to be protected. If this wasn't happening in the law, I am certain we would be having this conversation on a different level. But the reason why Lynn has called us here is because there's a legal conversation. There's a process that is taking place behind the scenes. And it is that every human being of goodwill who cares and is concerned about prosperity of people needs to arise and say, So if we allowed something in 2010 that gives rise to this, that could possibly lead to that, pedophilia and everything, we need to go back, amend the Constitution. Because the majority of the people in this space refuse, reject the system that condones homosexuality, lesbianism, and every act that is considered carnal according to the Constitution.
All right, thank you. I want them to react, but you were saying something because I also don't want to interrupt. So
Yes.
maybe you were saying something.
Yes, right now, like I mentioned before, in the United States, LGBTQ spirit and the movement legally, it is morphed, it is in its adult stage.
Yeah.
Right now in California, a child can go to school and decide that they are homosexual. 5-6-year-old can decide, I don't want to be a boy anymore, I want to be a girl. And the parent has no right to stop them, and they can go directly to a hospital and have a sex change, and the parent will just be informed later on. That's where this is going. That's where this will morph into. It will blur the lines between what is right and what is wrong. It will blur the lines between the sexes. It will blur the lines between adult and child. It will blur the lines between what is good and what is evil. And so there will be, if there is no more line, there's no more boundary, like she mentioned. And if there's no more boundary, the darkness that will come upon this land is similar to what we're already seeing in the United States right now. And we haven't even gone into describing the amount of disease, HIV and cancer of the colon, and the colon coming out, the surgical procedures, the suffering that people suffer afterwards. And I'm saying this because right now we are currently funding. There are Elijah Mukisa is one of them. He's just a young man who used to be gay, who was actually initiated into homosexuality through a non-governmental organization called Sexual Minorities. I won't go into that too much, but they got him from high school. The guy was only 16 years old. They inducted him into doing gay porn, and because the money was so easy, he started doing it. Now he's in the recovery phase. So we're actually funding his rehabilitation, and it's not just him, it's a house full of them. And now that same group that inducted him, when they found out that he was sick, they want nothing more to do with him. They don't care. They turned their backs on him. So now we're paying for ARV pills. We are the ones paying for their sustenance, for them to have a roof over their head. What I'm saying that to say this. This movement is very dangerous. They will betray you when you are dead, when you are alone in the hospital bed dying. They will not visit you. It is a very two-faced spirit. I just want you to know that.
Can I ask, before we go on, because there is a question and one of you can answer. love your neighbor as you love yourself, and it was raised last time. If the Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself, why would you not extend that much love? Or what is the interpretation of that statement?
Let me begin. I'll say we don't hate people. Even God does not hate people. Sometimes it's the actions that kind of draw the line. And also we try to explain what is the cause of that action. That's where now we'll base our argument on spirituality. Anything that is beyond the confines of moral standards, then you can only locate it to spirituality. I want to share this testimony. This happened 2 weeks ago. I do a lot of high school missions. And we were praying to the dormitories in a certain girls' school, and this girl began to manifest. And later, we discovered she said she's a queen. And she has one assignment. These are Form 1. She has one assignment to recruit as many people into lesbianism as possible. And part of what she was using were the pads. We can't capture these things on camera because this is someone's child, and these schools need to be treated with such conversation. I even have on my phone a girl who called me from Nanyuki and told me I'm now entering into a 20th rank. The more I recruit into lesbianism, the bigger rank I get. And so I began to see the spirituality of this thing. And I asked her, so what happens when you don't recruit? And she began to tell me there are consequences, people die. These are, if you want, I can bring witnesses and maybe even talk to the principal if any one of them wants to verify, because what she was doing is pick up the pads, and these were supposed to be used for these rituals. So spirituality is so much misunderstood, and what the devil does, he will come and bring a blanket cover and say it's called religion. And so anything to do with religion, Christianity, that thing is, colonialists used it. And then when there's all that blindfolding, we now begin to release logic and what we want to call human rights. And then now when we speak about the agenda, it looks like you can't verify the agenda. So whatever we are doing right now is in the confinement of our rights. When the Bible says, love your neighbor, it doesn't end there. It says, as you love yourself. So if I can't do it to me, I can't do it to you. That's the standard. So it's, first of all, self-love is the ground on which you can love your neighbor. And as I've said, we don't hate the LGBTQ. These are normal human beings. When I go to preach in a club, I don't hate the drunkards, I hate the alcohol. When I go to preach to thugs in jail or people who are stealing, we don't hate the criminal. We don't hate the criminals, we hate the crime. So we must speak against what is making them to be who they are and deal with the forces that is behind them. We love them. Even after this, I want to pray for these people. This is God's image. These are God's children. And I want to tell you, God loves them. And God is not bound by the laws of the land. No. God loves men unconditionally, that he even died for us on the cross. So we don't love them. And that conversation should never come, that the church hates them. We don't hate them.
And
but
if somebody told you that they hate you, or if somebody, because the church is oftentimes misrepresented, and the church is also suffering from an influx of false prophets, because by standing in the pulpit, you can easily collect money from those who do not read the word of God for themselves. So for that reason, there's an influx of people assuming the pastoral position to take money. Now, when it comes to counseling, or when it comes to dealing with those who are not born again, they have no idea, because they do not come from a perspective of love. They are coming from a perspective of greed. And that greed leads to abuse, and it leads to misappropriation of everything. And so and lots of people suffer from church wounds. I suffer from church wounds. Everybody has a church wound story. But I guarantee you that the real Jesus who died for you is not like a lot of these ministers. Okay? And please don't turn away from the church just because of something that a Christian did to you. That Christian did not die for you. Jesus died for you.
Yes.
And he's super cool. And if you meet him, he's so super cool that you'll be like, why was he so... Because hell is good at marketing. That's why he's so misconstrued and misunderstood. But he's super cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will allow you, Antonina, but allow me first to let them, and then we can pick it from you. All right?
Okay.
Okay? Or is it brief?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is brief. I want to bring in a dimension of love. And I want to use the prison as an example. In every society, there are prisons. Who are in prison? Husbands, wives of people, sons and daughters of people. And I remember watching a certain time they were celebrating, some realities of what happens in prison. And they were actually saying This is a correctional center. Yes, it is called prison. Why? Because it is prohibiting anyone. You don't want to involve yourself with criminal activity because you could end up here. But when they are inside there, the picture they're given to understand is this is a correctional center. Why does any normal society do that? It's because when we take people to jail, it's not because we hate them, but it is because whatever conduct they are participating in is not good for the larger society. If someone steals, if someone kills, if someone rapes, if someone commits incest, if someone is a homosexual, this thing, yes, I have to bring it up because that's where this conversation is coming in. It's a criminal reality in this space that we are living in, plus 254. It is a crime. And let us not forget that, because if we forget that, then we are blurred by the truth, by the falsehood that this is anything but a crime. Now, when people are taken to prison, that is love. It is the love of society that says, you have stolen something, you have killed someone, we're going to take you into a correctional center so that you rethink your ways. So love must never be seen as a passive force. Love must always be seen as the driving, strongest force on earth. So that if you will harm my child, I may sit here and smile with you, but if you harm my child, you may realize I'm a leopard or a lion. Why? My love for my child is saying, don't harm him. Don't harm her. Don't bring to these children media, cartoons that are going to manipulate and corrupt their imagination and their understanding of what reality is. So love, even the love of God, must never be misconstrued to mean what Hollywood, as we've been told about Hollywood, what Hollywood portrays as love. That is not God's love. God will send people to hell, not because he hates them, but it's because he has demonstrated his love, but people have decided we don't want that love.
All right, thanks. Mary, looks like you have a lot going on.
I want to, first of all, we can all have opinions,
Yes.
but facts will always remain facts. And I want to point out a couple of those things, On Chiloba's murder, first of all, Jackton didn't confess. It was a false story sold by Citizen TV. You can go to any police station. You can even call the DCI today and ask him. And that's why there's a whole court process going on, and there is a next case that is happening when in
He
June.
did not confess?
He did not confess.
What's
it was a
the-
false story that was sold that he confessed because of the climate of everything that was happening on social media. But he did not come out to confess, and that's why since he has been brought to the stand, he keeps on saying he's not guilty. Now, whether he's guilty or not, that is another conversation. And when we're speaking about violence, when we pose the same narrative he used, it's like saying in cis-heterosexual relationship, there's no intimate partner violence. Intimate partner violence is there. And we didn't keep quiet. The LGBTQ community didn't keep quiet. Maybe the people you interact with kept quiet. But as far as I'm concerned, just because Chiloba was murdered potentially by a lover doesn't make it any less a homophobic attack, because in the history of homophobic attacks, that's how they happen. You also have to understand, the same way you keep on saying, we have a lot of people who are not even in the community but will sell the narrative because of the benefits they get and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean, for me as a queer person, I will not interact with someone who comes to me with that falsehood. Because we've been blackmailed, we get blackmailed, we get cornered, we get brought to spaces where you think you're going to meet someone, the excitement of I've just met someone for the first time, I like them, they like me and all that kind of stuff. Kumbe you're getting cornered to be beaten and all that kind of stuff, And so all those things happen to people. And all that conversation, if we are gonna have the conversation about Chiloba, I will advise for all of us to wait until the court process is done, the ruling is done, and then we can have the conversation. But you can't say the queer community kept quiet. We didn't keep quiet. It's just because social media has what we call algorithms, and it works specifically to bring you information so that it can bring the conversation you want to see and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean how Chiloba was murdered was brutal. And you highlighted the extensiveness of that brutality. And it could be his partner. It could not be, who knows? I'm not the one who has the truth. We all don't have the truth. The truth lies with the court process that will try to prove and all that kind of stuff. The second thing, you said in California, children are allowed to transition without their parents' permission under the sun in this world.
a child that is below the age of consent, which varies from country to country, can't go through any medical process without the consent of a guardian. Now, those who are able to transition at a young age is because they're in families of people that are accepting of their journeys, and they allow them through their constitutional provided right to actually consent for their kids to go through that, right? The third thing is the whole concept of bringing up children and pedophilia and all that kind of stuff. And I totally I stand with you on the side of anyone who is an abuser to children. I don't even listen. I don't have children. I don't plan to have children, not a single day in my life. Not because I'm a lesbian, because being lesbian doesn't stop me from having children if I wanted to. And we have alternative ways of having children. And I don't think the cis heterosexual people had a problem with it until queer people started claiming their rights. Because we have people who are not fertile. They can't be able to give birth for whatever reason, right? Some of them have cysts in their fallopian tubes, some of them, like different things that hinder them from getting children. And we have alternative ways in which they can be able to have children, surrogacy. You know, they can go through IVF and all that kind of stuff, and they're able to have children. And so anyone can have children with that regard. And being a lesbian doesn't mean I disregard that when you want to have a child, it involves both the X and the Y chromosomes and all, and the sperm and the egg. I'm not invalidating that aspect of it. That happens. But I, as I'm concerned as an individual, I don't want to have children. That doesn't mean I don't live my everyday life protecting children. Whether they're straight, whether they are queer. You will never catch me having a conversation with a child and I'm telling a child, I'm a lesbian, do you accept me? I will not bring that conversation to a child, because I do acknowledge and I do respect even you with so much power you have over your child. When your child hits the age of consent, which is 18, they can make their own decisions. And everyone should, in the very least, grow up in an environment that allows them to experience that. Another thing that came up is the aspect of, if you ask LGBTQ people, there's an aspect of violence that they've gone through, and that's why all straight people have gone through violence. When I was watching the video the other day, I watched your experience with violence in the society that you've grown up in, right? And you've gone through that. Did you become a lesbian? No, you didn't become a lesbian. Doesn't mean you didn't grow up in a violent home. Everyone, it's almost founded in the African culture how parents can be impulsive and they can be abusive and they can be the kind of people who don't practice listening to children as an entity, but rather to say, I am saying you are not going to play with your friend today, and I'm your parent, what I've said is what I've said. I am saying today you must eat this even when the child doesn't like eating that food and all that kind of stuff. We all grow up in environments where if it's not your parent, it's your guardian. If it's not your guardian, it's another relative who does things, and you get to experience them, and those affect you and all that kind of stuff. I will reiterate in that statement and say what I said at the beginning. You shouldn't use anyone's experience of abuse to invalidate who they are as a human being. Now, the other thing that I want to address, which is also factual, we've talked a lot about media and how TVs and radios and everywhere where we consume entertainment products, they have scenes about gay people and all that kind of stuff. The question I like asking people is it gay people who regulate what content comes on TV? I don't think it's gay people. Kenya has a system that regulates that, right? And it has a duty to regulate that. And the reason it allows all those things, best believe the truth of that is against me as much as it's against queer people as much as it's against non-queer people, because governments and all that kind of allow that because these are investors. Netflix has shows it runs in different countries. You know, Netflix has ways it bars people. Unless you have VPN, you can't watch shows that are aired specifically in other countries. Do you know why? It's because Netflix has come to the country, has talked to the department that is involved in that, and they've agreed on terms of investment, and they've invested. And at the end of the day, the evil that buries us all is the fact that people are prioritizing what they want to have in their pockets in terms of money and all that kind of stuff, and they forget that there are people who are affected. Because I am not, as a queer person, I'm not responsible for coming to your home and telling you, Pastor T, this program airs this, don't show your child. That is not my responsibility. That will be as much as me imposing in your home and how you run your things, right? But it's your duty to do that. And if you want to hold someone responsible, which I'm pro, if today we're going to have a protest on the things we show on TV are not child-friendly and all that kind of stuff, I'll be the first one to go on the streets and say they're not child-friendly and they should be. But at the end of the day, even if that is said, who is the one responsible to ensure your children don't consume that? You are the one who is responsible. You buy that TV. You give them access to all those things that you give them access to, that they're able to access all that. But why is then the problem transferred to LGBTQ people? LGBTQ people don't run Netflix. We don't own Netflix. We don't own TV stations. We don't own all these sites. So all this to say, all these things we can talk about, the other thing that was said was about forcing a man to dress and all that kind of stuff. I don't think clothes are gendered. I don't think clothes are gendered at all, because I'm wearing my jacket. This jacket isn't a man's jacket because a man didn't buy it. It's my jacket I bought with my own money. It's my property, right? And stuff. And so all these things, when you look at them, people have their own views about how they want to live their lives. And I think the biggest conflicts we have in the room is the fact that we get accused all the time of imposing and trying to recruit people and all that kind of stuff. But I always ask people, before today when we were having this conversation, have you ever met me? Have you ever met me anywhere trying to recruit anyone? And we can use those as true life stories. The same way I do recognize a lot of men come into my DMs and come into my posts and like vilify my existence as a queer person. But that doesn't mean if I meet Bamboo, I'll tell you, Bamboo, you're a bad person because men do that. Because Bamboo has never done anything to me. And the reason also religious people were quiet before that story was aired on Citizen, which, like I said, proven beyond reasonable doubt, Jackton didn't confess, right? But the reason there was a flare up against Christians and the reason Christians were quiet until that story aired is because it's not false. There's a lot of violence that has been perpetrated against LGBTQ people, and it has been based off of religion. In our community, we don't believe this. God doesn't believe this, and so we don't want you in our community. And people get burnt, and people get beaten, and all that kind of stuff. Another conversation that has been brought up, which is a big falsehood, because last week when you're having a conversation, you had a gay man here, and I wish he was here for people to ask him those questions. People talk about things, if you have sex, I don't know, anal sex and all that kind of stuff, your intestines come out and all that kind of stuff. Have you gone to a gay person and asked them? Because any act of violence, even if you go through any form of abuse, for example, even through your vaginal opening and you go through any form of abuse, intestines can come out through that. Abuse is different from... No, it is true.
No.
That's not
Go
scientific.
read medically. Go read medically about cases of rape that have... No, wait. About cases... No, wait. About cases of rape...
Uterus, intestines, even...
No, just wait for a second.
We can...
From abuse, not just coming out, just the same way they don't just come out from the anus.
Yes.
But if it's a violent experience that does the openings and all that kind of stuff, it comes out from...
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it just happens when you're just seated. I'm not saying that. I'm saying from an abuse experience. Because women go through very heinous acts of rape and all that kind of stuff. And bottles are inserted and all that kind of stuff.
I think you were alluding to the guy you helping.
Yes.
He has had past...
Yes. All kinds of medical, malfunctions because of the trauma that comes through. Because what are we talking about here? We're talking about a penis being inserted into the rectum of another man and being driven in over and over and over again. And that abuse is because the rectum was not designed to receive. It was only designed as an exit, and so the large intestine begins to come out, and that leads to all kinds of other problems that we don't
I'm
have
going
time
to
get
push
into.
back against this very unhealthy obsession with queer people's sex lives, because it's an unhealthy obsession, and I want to push back against it. Because I think in this obsession, even if now here we decide let's talk about heterosexual people's sex lives, no one will enjoy this conversation because it is a private part of your life that you choose to conduct as you see fit. And I'm glad that you mentioned the aspect of abuse because it's truly heinous abuse. But I'm going to push back against something else. The existence of someone as being queer does not make them an abuser. And people who have gone through abuse, this is not the time to weaponize, as Bereliz was saying, to weaponize their very dark experiences and say, oh, it happened because queer people exist in the world. That is not true. Anyone who has the statistics about abusers knows that there's no connection between sexual orientation and the likelihood of someone being an abuser. There are other things that come into play. You had mentioned adverse childhood experiences. You mentioned divorce. You mentioned abuse, you mentioned a neglectful parent or an absent parent. I think even in this room, if we were to take a survey of people who are heterosexual, they have been through one or the other of these things. So let's separate trauma and the experiences of trauma and trying to connect it with someone being queer. Those two things are very different. I'm also going to push back against this idea that, and you've mentioned it again, and I'd stood against it before, that children are not in danger because queer people exist. That is a true lie, if anything like that exists. That is an absolute lie. And going back to this point that the Pastor T mentioned about trainings and how people are going through advocacy trainings, across the NGO sector, everyone goes through trainings. And I also want to say
I'll give you the
that
link.
right-wing, it's okay, but I also
facts.
want to say that right-wing fundamentalist movements also conduct their trainings. This idea that pedophilia and queerness are linked, that is a training idea. That is an idea that has been trained into people to say, oh, when you go, try to make this connection between harming our children, pedophilia and queerness. Those two things are not. I'm going to, let me just
allow
finish.
me.
Actually, Antonina did make a very clear link.
And that's what
that
I want
now,
Can I allow
yeah.
me? So, Antonina, I want you to state categorically what you said.
Yes.
The connection between the existence of the LGBT community
Yes.
to the harmfulness of the children.
Yes.
So that now I do not want hearsay.
Yes.
I want to pick it from your say,
Yes.
then you can react to what she says.
Yes.
Go on.
Now, and I'm truly thankful that this is part 2.
Yes.
In part 1, when we were coming to an end, a lady seated right where you're seated was turned around and said, I have something against the homosexuals. What is it that she stated? I have a problem that right now I cannot watch a movie without being afraid that my children will be able to see a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. What is that parent saying? That parent is saying, I am seated here because I think these guys are really being beaten up. But I have a problem because right now, already there's a push towards media. There's a push towards the education system. We know that NGOs have been going to schools and teaching children inappropriate content.
Yes.
What is that inappropriate content? That they're teaching children as young as 10 years old that, masturbating is your human right. And parents are keeping you from something that is good, all right? So that the entire comprehensive sexuality education, which is a thematic ideology that I've been following through consistently, they are very intentional to separate me, the parent, from my children.
Okay.
And to teach my children that I am denying them something good, which is their human right. So categorically, I am saying here, right now, the conversation that we really should be having is what is happening in the court of law. When lesbianism, homosexuality is being done behind the scenes, people didn't have a problem when it was a secret. Right now, after the ruling, is when we are saying, you have crossed a line you shouldn't have.
Okay.
And what is it that gave you that leeway? It is a certain unpacking of a certain clause that people now are using.
Okay.
So I see the harm in that.
Yeah.
The ideology of lesbianism, homosexuality, all that is very sinister in how they creep that ideology to our children.
Okay.
So that right now, I'm afraid of even the YouTube kids, okay? Because it was touted as safe for children. But right now, I have gone in there and found cartoons that I watched when I was growing up. But right now, what are they painting a picture of? They're painting a picture of gay, I will not even use the word gay, homosexual lifestyle. And when that happens, what have you taught my child? You have taught my child something that is inappropriate against what the majority of Kenyans are saying. We are a people who believe this is a criminal
Thank you for
conduct.
clarifying, because I
Yes.
want to move to Rick's, but now could you react to that, since now it's clear for all of us?
So actually, part of my reaction is to say that the thing you did say in part 1 and the thing you've said just before I spoke, you made a very clear link towards the physical harm of children and the sexual harm against children and queer people, and that's a lie. It's a total lie, and the existence of someone as a queer person does not pose any danger to a child. And that's why I said the real conversation we should be having is not about behind the scenes. It's about on the table, and which rights are we trying to secure for everyone. The law and the Constitution treats everyone as equal. The same law that will come to protect you. And so we are having a rights-based conversation. And so when you say things like these people are dangerous to children, or they have this agenda, and actually you have misrepresented the CSC agenda, because I have seen it and you've misrepresented it. We are sharing ideas that are not grounded in fact. I have read it as well.
Even the
and I'm
okay.
going to push back against that. Okay. So I just want the audience to be very careful and to hear that really across both panels, there's one person that is saying, or one side that is saying, oh, you know what, we are going to deny you your rights because we have decided that according to what we believe and a doctrine that not everyone shares, that you must live like this. And the other side of the panel is saying, please just allow us to be able to get medical care that responds to our needs, to be able to associate in a way that responds to our needs, to not be homeless, because many queer people are evicted from their homes simply because of their identity. And let me just lastly say that the law in Uganda, I think we hadn't talked about it a lot, but this law in Uganda that might be transplanted into this society of ours, our Kenyan society, the law not only criminalizes certain acts, but it criminalizes identity. And it has provisions that will criminalize anyone who does not report a queer person. And the penalties are very extreme, up to and including death. Yeah. And so what we are saying is, we are going to live in a society where, Pastor T, you said you had queer people in your church. If that law were to take effect, the mere fact that someone somewhere decides that you did not report, you are held responsible now. And so that creates a society where really the law and these laws that we have built that are very hateful and violent laws can take up anyone. And I know it's easy to think, oh, it's just those queer people, so that's fine, them they can be oppressed. And it's difficult to realize that that will also turn into you being oppressed. And in ending, I will say that the true immorality that exists is in people not being able to see the humanity of others and just grant them the bare necessities for them to live a full life. And that's the true immorality.
Okay. Can I say something?
I think Rix has
before all of you.
Just a statement.
Briefly.
Prostitution is illegal, but their first clients are MPs who make the law. But no one has ever complained about prostitution because the law has never changed to say it is legal. The day they will go and say from today it is legal, you'll see an uproar because it defies the order. When a prostitute is sick, even people do harambes. When a prostitute dies, even pastors bury them. But you see, it is not yet legalized. Our conversation began with, this thing is now pushed in the legal infrastructure. No one has ever discriminated LGBTQ. They walk in the streets of Nairobi, holding hands, and you know this is lesbian, these are couple. No one has ever. When the law now pushed that agenda is when we began to say, no, we know how this has happened in the West. We have a model. The same way you have a model in Uganda, we have a model of where this is going, and we already see it in the West. So we must save ourselves before we reach there, because we are founded on principles.
The ruling did not bring in anything new. The ruling merely entrenched that which is already our right by
go and study the metamorphism of this stuff. It does not begin like, you can marry, you can do. It begins with accepting you are there. You can associate.
Allowing you to form organizations that can hold bank accounts, that can receive funding from foreign nationals to promote your agenda. That's what we are guarding.
Do you know, if nothing happens, these guys have won. If nothing happens in this land, if this one takes a petition tomorrow to the Supreme Court, which is the highest court on the land, you can't petition the Supreme Court and say, I identify, you can't discriminate me because of this, and I want to get married in Pastor T's church. Another case will begin.
We have a petition already, FYI, from the case in 2019.
So what we are doing as a church right now, even if it means going back to the referendum, we must guard our principle.
There is the aspect of sex work and HIV. The conversation about HIV and the statistics about men having HIV, and it finding out that men who have HIV, the biggest percentage, are cis heterosexual men in marriages, but they're not, their partners do not have that, they're infecting each other, is because sex is sex. And Calevera said, you look at queer people and you think of their lives from a point of sex and sex alone. And that's why you're constantly thinking they're harming your children, even when what I do is not, just like any cis heterosexual person. I don't think you have sex in front of your children. You don't have sex in front of your children, right? You don't engage in anything sexual in front of your children. Queer people also are human beings that have capacity and ability to actually comprehend that doing all these activities in front of children is wrong. Having conversations with children about these things is wrong. So that's that on that, and queer people do that. So it's wrong on that alone. And the reason the conversation about MSM, we have MSM, men having sex with men are not necessarily gay, because cis heterosexual men have sex with men all the time. If prostitution is a conversation we are gonna have, which is what I wanted to drive at, where
men having sex with men are not gay?
No,
Not
in prostitution, it's sex work.
I'm asking.
Yes,
so
that's why I'm
same with the
responding.
audience will
That's
be
why I'm
asking.
responding,
Yes.
because they brought it up.
Yes.
In sex work, you're a person who is selling sex and another person who is buying sex.
Okay.
You don't say, I'm not taking your money, unless you don't want to, which you can always say, I'm not taking your money because I don't want to have sex with you and all that kind of stuff. But anyone can buy sex from anyone. And these men are still going back to their homes, to their wives and their children and all that kind of stuff. And I want that to be noted. And that's why the HIV department and all that kind of stuff, in the late 80s, early 90s, when the whole breakout of HIV was coming out and ways to mitigate it, and all those conversations were being had. It was not being had from a point of, and of course, gay people would easily fall in that category, because just because you're gay doesn't mean you're not a sex worker. You can be a sex worker and all that kind of stuff. But it's not true that if you are a sex worker, you are essentially gay because of who you're having sex. You're just having sex because you want money and all that kind of stuff. And people do that all the time.
Right.
So that is very, very important to note. And then the thing about familial abuse, I had said earlier about families, but the concept of familial abuse is also derived from a point of what is family in that essence. People forget that. For me, as a queer person, I grew up in a Catholic home. I grew up very religious and understanding, like Rick said, without anyone unpacking the whole concept of the history and everything that came from that, understanding religion and what was expected of me. And it was until I became of age and until I began to formulate my own opinions and biases and concepts about humanity and life and all that kind of stuff, that I stopped being a Christian person way before I even came out as a queer person. And no one approached me. The whole concept of, someone must have told them, sold the idea, and I've listened. Kids in school saying they're possessed and all that kind of stuff, and they're recruiting. I'm among the people who want to go to that school and see that person who says they're even ranks. And if you get, I don't want a number. I want to go there. Yeah. I want you to take me there.
The link.
I want you to take me there.
Will you be infringing on the rights of that girl? Because we prayed for her.
I feel when it comes to rights, it depends on what the person consents to be done to them.
So the reason I'm saying you take me there is because I'm hoping you can go and ask if it's okay. Yes. And then if you're told it's okay, we can go, because that is something I would love to see and to see how it happens, because we are not some sort of a cult that we have ranked somewhere that if you recruit a number of people, because it's not about recruiting. I cannot come to Lynn and tell Lynn, I'm doing all these things, and if you don't do this, you're gonna be killed. Because at what point does then Lynn lose her right to make a decision and make a choice and be into someone and all that kind of stuff? It's a whole process. The same way you experience attraction is the same way I experience attraction. The only difference is while you'll be attracted to a woman, I will also be attracted to a woman. And I don't think there's anything.
That one I'll take you.
But
Sorry?
I'll take you.
Okay.
You see now that is violence, and that's what your Christianity.
I will take you.
To the school.
Girl. Yes, I'll
okay.
you.
You say no, Ali said at the wrong time. I was saying something and he said something.
Yes.
So
yes,
I
guys,
have to clear that.
Yes, I would want us to hold space for it. It's
for
only
us
fair
to talk,
that we also get to listen to him. There's a lot he hasn't reacted to. I also give you an opportunity for a parting shot as we also get to react briefly to what is happening in Uganda, right? All right, Rix.
Now, there is a male gay sex worker in Harare, Zimbabwe, right now. And because I do a lot of research with masculinities and just want to understand what's really going on, So in the particulars of sex work, the first time that I learned that we have male prostitutes, it bewildered me, because our education of a prostitute is it's just a woman, right? Now to even have a male gay sex worker was even out of this world. But then in my podcast, I talk about these issues, and there was a researcher I was working with who did a story from Zimbabwe, and he shared with me this young man's story. And this young man told us that as a gay sex worker, majority of his customers are married men. You know, majority of his customers are married men, you know, who identify as Christian, his words, yeah? And he himself also is a Christian. And he says he does not understand why people discriminate against him, because he believes in his God and he wants to go to church, and he also does his sex work, and he is not harming anybody. Nobody recruited him. He didn't go to a training. There was nothing forceful about the process, all right? Now, because we are living in an abusive society, right? It just so happens that, and it's funny because a lot of these stories come from the church, where when they ask somebody what happens to them, somebody who is gay, they ask what happened to them, and it's because they were abused and all these things. So now it is almost like corrective. Oh, because these things happened to you, that's why you're gay. Those things happened to me too. I was actually raped by a woman. You don't know that. I was raped by a woman. I didn't become gay. I didn't become a lesbian. I'm still who I am, right? I still chose to go to what attracts me to be me. And it was still not anybody's responsibility, even if I identified as gay, to come and tell me, now this new thing you took up is a function of pain. If I need healing, it is not upon you to decide how peace looks like for me, how healing looks like for me. For example, I also do not want to be a father. I don't want to have parents. And if I choose also, I won't even marry. It's my choice, right? Whatever the context of that choice, it's still mine. Do you get? It's still mine. So for me, I would want to see a world where we extend our understandings of what being a human being is. It's okay. If I believe in the Bible, I want to run my life in the concepts of that Bible. In fact, as Christianity began, it was never meant to be institutional. It was so personal. It was so personal. And what the gay community is saying, we want it to remain personal. It cannot be like to the national level, where if I identify as this, then I'm being told I cannot exist just because the other side has these ideas about what this thing is. There are equally so many stories that you may not have come across of queer people who have told time and again that they began feeling that way from when they were children. Nobody took them to school about being gay. Nobody recruited them. You get what I mean? Fine, we have these stories about recruitments and all these things. And for me, I'm just sad because we want to concentrate on that small part being the only truth. You know? 8 billion people in this world. You want to tell me all the gay people were trained to becoming gay? Come on, fam. Like, seriously. I'm just requesting us as noble humans, whether we are lawyers, whether we're human rights activists, whether whoever you are, your experience of truth does not have to be another person's experience of truth. That's what we're saying. Also, consent and abuse. In our conversation around queerness, we make them look like it's one thing. You cannot have sex with an animal. It's not consensual. The animal has not said, yes, you can have sex with me. That is not consensual. When you are a human being, and today as an adult, right, and I identify as gay, and I meet another guy who also identifies as gay, and they're like, yeah, we can have sex. I need to have the right to do that. You don't need to understand it. We are not going to schools to recruit any people to be gay as a result. So there is a bigger chunk of people who are left out of these conversations because it's insinuated that all of them are recruiters, that all of them are being funded. In fact, you would be surprised at the number of queer people that are poor in this country. Unbelievable. And that's actually the majority of them. But we don't want to get out of those church gates and look at the reality because we are actually scared.
All right.
We are scared.
Thank you. I'm going to just randomly pick one of you at a time so that you can get to react to this. Also give us your parting shot, but most importantly, also tell us what your views are in regards to what Uganda is experiencing matter LGBTQ. Who want to go first?
Me?
There you go. Yes.
First and foremost, I believe that what Museveni did was a move to protect the children. It was not a move to abuse homosexuals or to kill them, to destroy them, to violate any human right that they have. But he wants to protect his society from descending into what is already a reality in America. All right. Case number 2, Chiloba's lover, Jackton, used Chiloba's phone to conduct M-Pesa transactions after the pathologist determined that Chiloba was dead. There were M-Pesa transactions afterwards, and Jackton actually was the one who performed those transactions. So that's the reason why he is a prime suspect. In other words, if you turn up dead and I was found with your wallet, guess who's the prime suspect?
That is not
yours truly. In other words, yeah. I'm just saying
yes.
why he was a prime suspect. Okay,
Yes.
so it's going to be really tough to escape that. Point number 3, the Bible speaks about clothing gender. You said there is no gender for clothing. There is. God was the first one to clothe male and female. And if I came here with a miniskirt and high heels, you would call me trans. Why are you calling me trans?
No, I
because there
wouldn't.
is a difference between male and female clothing.
No, I wouldn't. I personally wouldn't call you trans.
Let me go on to the next point,
I wouldn't
please.
call you trans.
Statistically, the vast majority of pedophilia is in the form of sodomy. All right, statistically. The vast majority of pedophilia is in the form of sodomy. That's why we are fighting pedophilia, because right now the LGBTQ movement has added the letter P for pedophilia, meaning minor attracted persons. This is something that's going on in America right now. Minor attracted persons are people, they're calling them MAPs, all right?
A
And they're saying that this is a
going
psychological issue and that he has, and because
he's
of,
misinforming
wait a minute, because of his
people.
psychological issue, he has a right not to be treated as a sexual violator, but as a person who is suffering from a mental disorder. So
I want to understand that
Yes.
part.
Yes.
I also am interested.
Yes, they're calling
go on.
pedophiles
Yes.
minor attracted persons, and so that will be a P that is added to the LGBTQ. So they will have P. Now P for pedophile, meaning that he's a minor attracted person, and that legally he will be judged as a person who is suffering from a mental disorder, not as a sexual offender. And that is a big deal, because if he's not judged as a sex offender, then that means that he can easily get out of jail. That's a get out of jail free card. And so this is law that we're talking about here. We are blurring the lines between various different laws. And especially because LGBTQ rights, they don't seem to have a limit. They will go into, we have the right to teach your children. They will go into, we have the right to change the laws as to what is considered a male and what is considered a female. We have the right now to change the law and say that there are no longer male and female. There are 27 different species of gender. In other words, everything we know as reality is at stake, all right? They feel that demonstrating their sexually provocative dances are also a human right to children. Now, we have videos that we can show you, we can play them, we can have them edit them and show and just show you that there are transgender men dancing for minors. And they are dancing provocative. I mean, just stuff that you wouldn't even see in a strip club. So it is really bad. There is no border for this thing. If you do not nip it in the bud from the beginning, and it's not against you, it is against where it is headed. And so as ministers of the gospel, our job is to tell you that there is a standard, that there is a rule. People can call themselves Christians, but if they're not living like Christ, they're not Christians. They're wannabes. And I told you that the church is suffering from an influx of people who pretend to be that which they are not. Not everybody who goes to church will get into heaven. Not everybody who doesn't go to church will fail to get into heaven. But those that do the will of God, they will enter in. So our job as ministers is to warn you that this path that you're taking, it leads to fire. It leads to eternal separation from God. What you do from here is entirely up to you. But I will warn you as ministers of the gospel, once you've come into contact with us and we've warned you, every step you take towards God is a step up. Every step you take away from God is a step down. And if you choose to say to hell with our warnings, that is fine. You will live your life. We might not ever see you again. However, you will be journeying in a direction that leads to eternal separation from God, and that is called hell. All right. So with that warning, we love you, and we don't believe that you should be discriminated against for anything.
My parting shot then would be, at the end of the day, and I think Rick's pointed it out clearly, we could all have all our beliefs. And I was listening to Bamboo say his parting shot, and he kept on saying, warning and warning and warning. And I kept on listening to that, and it's ringing in my head. And I'm asking myself, do you warn a person who doesn't subscribe to the same system as yours against something they don't even believe in? And I think that is the biggest mishap with humanity in general. Let's take a book, let's read about things, let's understand people, let's have human interaction and human experiential, information and all that kind of stuff, so that when we're having conversation, instead of saying, in America currently, pedophilias are asking to be added. I don't think people don't have a right to have a conversation. That doesn't mean it's okay for you to associate that with LGBTQ.
But it's a fact, though. It's a
fact. What is a
yes.
fact is that pedophiles are asking to be added.
Yes.
Right? That's a fact.
They've already been added.
No, they haven't.
They have.
They haven't.
Okay.
They have.
Would you
But
agree
then
with them being added?
I'll
to
not
your
agree
conversation?
with them being added because, as Nyango was saying, conversations about our queerness is also founded on consent. That regardless of how I feel, regardless of who I'm attracted to, the only way I can be able to engage in any activity with that person is if and only if that person consents. And pedophile is not founded on consent because, if we have a constitution that says the age of sexual consent is 18, and a child and pedophile is basically with a person who can't consent, then that is already abuse. And I don't think LGBT.
But those are the very laws you want to change.
Right. No, those are not
and you
the
refuse
same.
to have a child,
And
but
see,
you want to
you
change
see,
laws that will affect my child.
You see now you're
See?
imposing what you think is the reality to what is
But you
factual.
said you don't want to have a child.
That is not. I don't want to.
But
I
you
don't
want to change
think.
laws that will affect mine.
I don't want to change any laws about you wanting to have children.
No, you're going to change laws that are going to affect my
Which
children.
law is that I'm changing that will hinder you from having a child?
No. That will affect my children. Laws affect
But
society.
I don't want laws about pedophiles being added to be there.
Yes,
I
so
am
we
not
leave-
saying
we
that.
leave
And
that,
you have
guys.
your belief on religion that makes you believe that is what I want.
Yeah, okay.
But I do not
Mary,
want that.
yes.
I do not want
If
that.
I let both of you continue, we won't have parting shots from Pastor T.
Yes.
I know you need to rush somewhere.
yes.
So what would be your parting shot?
I wanted
Not
to know
forgetting.
if she's a Kenyan. She sounds South African. Are you from Kenya?
I am Kenyan, but
She's-
also people say I'm South African to remove me from my reality
No, I'm
because
just
apparently
asking.
I'm so radical I can't be Kenyan.
No, it's not. I was
I'm
not-
Kenyan,
yeah,
born
that's-
and raised.
That's what I was just
Yes.
Yes.
wanting to know.
So as you conclude,
Mine is very simple.
and don't forget
Yes.
remarks on what's happening in Uganda.
Whatever is happening in Uganda is Ubuntu. We just need to guard our African culture. We need to guard our African society. It might have gone to the extreme, but I believe they understand better. I can't discriminate a law of a country I'm not a part of. But what I'll just tell everybody, there is only one agenda. Take God out of the equation, and the Bible says, and people will walk in their madness. That's Romans chapter number 1 from verse 24. Since they rejected God and they knew God is there, look at creation, society. We can say religion. The blanket cover being used here is religion or religion. What is that? There is God. There is operations of dealing with God. We never made God. God made us. And when we take God out of the equation, then all this perversiveness will take over. Mi nitamaliza tu kuongea na mbogi ya Kenya. Hizi ni siku za mwisho. Mwenye ana macho tu anacheki. Zili profesa. So ni hivyo. Na musema hivi, wale wameamua kuwa malele, na wale wameamua kuwa mage, waipige fiti. Lakini wasipige chachi. wasikuje church watuambie ni sisi tuna identify. So wenye tumeamua kuwa church, wacha tufuate Bible fiti, tuifuate inasema hii ni mbaya, isi mbaya. Watuite religious, watuite nini, but kila mtu observe lane yake. Scripture imekataa, tutaikataa. Wao wakae huko, wakiokoka tutawa embrace fiti, tutawapreachia, tutawabaptize na watasimama kama ruler. Hiyo ndio final statement.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Usiondoke kwanza, Rix.
Well, mine also is to say that kuna watu wa believe in God pia na wako na sisi. Ni mabrother zetu, ni masister zetu. If tuna reason from the point that the right life is from what God believes, God wants, there is somebody who does not believe in that God. They also have a right to be here. They have a right to be, and as long as they're not harming anybody, as long as they're not imposing their rights, their beliefs on anybody else. And what for me, I really want religious rights to be protected. You know, the same way I want queer rights to be protected. That's what I'm asking. These people are not saying you need to stop believing in God. You know, in fact, they want to be part of church. They are part of church right now in silence. Many of them, they're your friends, they're our friends. They're not they, us, they think. No, these people are with us every single day. You know what I mean? And we might say we are trying to protect our children. For me, we need to extend how our children view love and educate them on that. For me, that's where I come from, you know? And it's not to say, and again, abuse consent. Nobody is supposed to touch you if you don't consent to it until you understand what's really going on. Mm-hmm. That's just the baseline. So
your views on Uganda?
I think it's insane. I think it's part of deflecting from what's really ailing the Ugandan people, because the Ugandan people are going through so much pressure, and you can see what unifies those politicians right now, and quote unquote the church as well, is this LGBTQI conversation. But when you remove it from that society, the chaos is still there. Mm-hmm. So let's just be honest with ourselves that we are scared. Even this thing we call African values, Lynn, African culture, Lynn, there is no one African culture that was the same with another. It does not exist.
Okay.
It's an illusion.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Kalevera.
Antonina has not spoken.
Oh.
You could speak first. I can
Go
do
ahead.
last.
Just
go ahead.
It's okay. I'll finish.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll begin with Uganda. And there may be a lot of talk about Uganda from an outside perspective. But if you interact with the Ugandans, you will hear they have a history with homosexuals. And you may want to search about what happened in Namugongo. You may want to search about some young people that were forced by a certain political leader to participate in homosexuality. And because they rejected that, they were made to, and they were killed. And it is a society, it is a community that is speaking in one language, saying, we will not give even an inch to this discourse that gives any possibility that this reality could ever happen. Does that mean there are no homosexuals there? Of course there are. Does that mean there are no lesbians? Of course they are. But when it comes to law, law must be guarded and safeguarded for the majority of the people. And that's what we are also saying. So I'll come back to my parting shot. Mm-hmm. That the reason why we are having this conversation is really because we have taken this conversation to a place of legislation, of law. And when it is given that opportunity in the place of law, it means now it has every pervasive opportunity to enter into spaces I, as a parent, consider I must protect my turf. And like he's saying, ataongea na mbogi ya Kenya. Mimi nataka kuongea na wazazi wa Kenya. And I want to say, if there has ever been a time that we need to rise and speak in unison to protect our children, it is now. Because 1 inch will give rise to the more and the much. So that when we look at societies like the US that this minister of God has been speaking repeatedly about, I don't want that society that is so pervasive affecting my children. And I may not be able to do anything in the US, but there's something I can do in Kenya. And in Kenya, I am saying, right now I know that KCPF, the Kenya Christian Professionals Forum, and the leadership of the church have come together and they have begun the process of amending the Constitution. I am calling on to all parents who care about the children. It's unfortunate that there are people who don't want children. They simply just don't want children. Let me finish. It is unfortunate because as a community, we have ambitions. When a dad and a mom come together, get a son, they are hoping Onyango will bring them a son or a daughter someday. If there is difficulty, that is understood, and many communities will actually pursue, what can we do to resolve that? Why? Because it is the human thing to do to procreate and to continue this generation to the next and to the next. Okay. But the reality is, of course, he's an adult and no one can force him on that. But this is the take, that right now, because of the ruling that was made, we need to arise and say, we will protect Kenya as a state, and we will protect it because we are a God-fearing people. That's why in our national anthem, that's why in our constitution, we recognize God. Okay. But we continue with this conversation, there will come a time that even God will be illegal to mention in our national anthem. Yes. And we are saying already, because we can tell when the rain is going to pour, we are also saying on a moral ground, from a social perspective, from a religious perspective, there is darkness coming. And we also need to educate our children and prepare our children and tell them there is danger. And there are dangerous people who are in schools, who are in different places, who will want to teach you things that are against what me as a parent have taught you or you have learned in church. Oh. And it is that God made a man and a woman, brought them together and told them, be blessed, be fruitful. But there are unions that will not grant that fruitfulness. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our final remark, Calavera.
So I had spoken about Uganda, but I want to belabor the point that queer people are real people. Before they are queer, they are humans. And I think it's important that we realize the sentiments we share can lead to actions, to mindsets, to systems, and to structures that keep people aside. So it's true that even in Uganda, being able to walk into a health center as a queer person, you will not receive the basic human care that you are entitled. You spoke about being a victim of medical violence, and it's true. Can you imagine walking into a place and a doctor will not treat you simply because of how you identify? At some point in history, the largest fight we had was that women are not allowed to vote because they cannot think for themselves. And we moved past that point because we recognize the inherent humanity in everyone. Now, these laws and policies that queer people would like to be revisited are simply about basic rights. The Supreme Court ruling was about the freedom of association, nothing new. It's already enshrined in our Bill of Rights, and that is what was accorded to them. But when we speak about hate and violence, and exclusion is a form of hate and violence, what we don't realize is that when we allow ourselves to be party to acts of hate, violence, and exclusion, we assume that it will happen to the least of us in society. But really one day it will come to us because me, you, we are different in some way. You know, I am a woman or I am young, and one day that will be used to discriminate against me. So we have to be careful that we do not allow that hate and violence can become the laws by which we live by. And you had all shared that, oh, it starts like this and it starts like this. I will also say that hate starts with the least of us. We say it's okay to hate those people. And then soon enough, it grows and grows, and this hate comes to engulf all of us. I will also say that the same logic that informs homophobia, that informs transphobia, is the same logic that allows all other forms of violence to exist, including violence against children, including violence against women, femicide, and even ethnic violence. Once we say that it's okay to exclude those people, because they are different. They don't deserve their full rights because they are different. It will then apply to all of us. And finally, I will say that the practice of faith is not what is violence. It is the doctrine that we hold on to which is violence. I know you feel that what you're doing is for the best of the society, but really what you also don't realize is that you are becoming party to making people feel like they're outside, that they're singled out, that they are not worthy. And I don't think that sits right with you. And finally, I will also end with a call to action. And I will end with a call to action to all Kenyans, to all well-meaning people, people across the world who are watching this, including parents who want to safeguard the future of their children, that you want your children to live in a future where they're able to respect everyone and they understand that someone else having their rights does not mean they don't have their rights. I know you don't believe it, but this is true. You can have your full rights as a believer, as a Christian, as a missionary of the gospel, and I can have my full rights as whomever I am. Whether you're a queer person, whether you're not a queer person, whichever side of the spectrum you fall, we can live in a society where we both have our rights. And I think that is what our laws need to safeguard. Not a religious framework, but a human rights-based framework where we see each other's humanity before anything else.
Thank you so much. I would want to say anyone with a burning remark before we go on, but all of you might want to.
Quick question. When you were born, did the doctor refuse to remove you from your mother's womb?
He was doing their mandate to give birth to me.
But I thought you were born this way.
Which way?
Which way?
Meaning that born gay, you were born this way, meaning that when he removed you from your mother's womb, he did not discriminate against you. I think discrimination is a myth.
Discrimination is a myth?
Wow.
I think discrimination is real.
Nobody discriminated against you when you came here.
Discrimination
Everybody
is
loved you.
That will be the start of part 3, guys. You did that? That will be the start of part 3, guys. Thank you so much. I did not want to rush the ending of this conversation, but as you all know, there is power, around where we are filming from. We had to put bats in these lights and the batteries are running out, but thank you so much. I believe what needed to be said has been said today. And if you feel like there is a gap, I am right here. Part 3 loading anytime soon, but I just want to say I
Can make
appreciate
it a series.
we can make it a series.
Let's talk about the gays.
Whoa. Anyways, thank you so much for coming, even for taking time from your busy schedule. Even as we are sitting here, Pastor T is like, Lynn, I gotta go. I do not want you to miss your meeting. So thank you also for, just making time to come. Antonine, I appreciate you coming here one more time. Mary Liz, just reaching out to you and asking, could you help me even coordinate this? And you said a big yes. I appreciate that. Rix, continue doing your thing with words. I appreciate you just making time to be here, and Calavera wanting to be the one ending this conversation. Call to action from everyone, and just to say I genuinely appreciate you having a very, very healthy conversation. Guys at home, I don't know what you think about today's show. Please, I always say we are here to learn. We are here to grow together. On the comment section, what has been your take home? What has been your observation? And what can we do better next time to make sure that we continue having this conversation and impacting one life at a time? I know I have to go, but I don't want to say bye before thanking the incredible team behind this work. Our amazing creative director, Edgar and Muga. We appreciate you for being behind the lens. And of course, the people who have helped me put this conversation together, Lynette Acheng and Joshua, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking time. And our incredible editors, Sam and Kevin, for compiling this episode and making sure it reaches you guys right on time. You want to know where to find each and every of these individual? Their tags were in the introduction. But now, pinned on the comment section below is their names and where you can be able to connect with them, just in case you want to get a book, you want to get more views, you want to follow their work. On the comment section, they are all the full social handles on how you can connect with them. To connect with me, info@lnn.digital or lynn.ngugi@lnn.digital. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Take good care of yourself, be kind, and thank you so much for the love. My people, 600K subscribers. I want to say thank you. So, tuonaneni kesho, sawa? Bye-bye.